Hello, I'm that Rob Human, and this is part 15, I think it's 15, of Tabletop Playground mod series. In this episode, I'm going to cover some UI aspects that I haven't had a chance to really touch on, but are really handy in terms of like niche use cases. I'm also going to do a little bit of housekeeping first, and that is this is probably going to be one of the last episodes of this series. In the first episode, I kind of alluded to the overall path of this series, and one of the things that I touched on was procedural or generative content, and I decided I think I'm going to split that into its own series, because that gets into a lot of coding and framework stuff that exists outside of Tabletop Playground. So I'm probably just going to fork that off onto its own thing. I'm not sure what else I'm going to cover here just yet, but yeah, we'll probably tack on a couple more episodes at the end of this. So just wanted to say that out loud. So these UI things here, I'm actually going to jump into here, and we're going to pull up this miniature. And the only difference that I've done so far here is I've already started up a script, and I'll show you that in a second, and just assigned it to here. And that just makes it easier for me to come in and create an empty state. Oh, you know what? I'm actually going to come back out of here, and I'm going to set it up with a different table. Let's go with this one. And there's a specific reason for that we'll get into. But essentially this lets me just drop this in here, and now I can just reload the scripts as I wish. So this is the script as it is right now. You minimize that and minimize all that. And it's obviously just like an EFI that has no content to it. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to add a UI element to the object, and it's going to contain a card. If I can show the card here. And I just pulled this from Attack Wing, so like it could be any stat card or anything. And obviously this could be a card item in the world, but like if you got a setup where you have like, you know, a whole bunch of miniatures and whatnot, they each have their own stats, it might be helpful to be able to see the stat card without having to come back to your hand or you know, the adjacent table or whatnot. Or like at your side of the table to be like, oh wait, this, and then the card is down there, and it's just, anyways. So the idea here is let's find a way to link the card in mental model with the miniature. So right off the bat, you probably would be like, all right, let's do a card UI equals new UI element, and we'll right off the bat add that UI to actually, quick aside, one of the things that I do here is I just did it here. I'll hit Control-Shift-I, which auto imports everything, but that only works if you have a certain keyboard shortcut set up, and this is the one. So if you actually do Control-Shift-P to go to preferences, or go to this command and hit open keyboard shortcuts JSON, you can actually add this key command to it. Actually, I think that's the wrong one. Control-Shift-I. There it is. This is the command. You just add this to your JSON, and Control-Shift-I will actually import anything that's missing. So that's how I auto import, as it were. Anyways, so this card UI, as always, I'm going to scale it by half, set up my anchors to be half, and card UI dot widget equals, and let's just do a render, and we'll do an image tag. And the source will be UI/enterprise.jpg. And Control-Shift-I to get this JSX and TTBG into scope, which is what parses the JSX tag. So there we go. Okay, so, nothing fancy here. Let's do a yarn watch just so that it live updates. Cool. And we'll reload the script, and there's the card. I mean, clearly this isn't ideal because you've got the card that's a little gross. So let's play with this a little bit here. Now I know I've set the height of that card to be, like, the actual image is 512, so I'll do a height of 256. And I can set the width to either 0 or leave it undefined, and it will auto-scale and keep the same aspect ratio. There we go. We've reduced it by half. Awesome. And that's just, it's not very legible. That's okay. We'll get to that. So, obviously it's taking up a whole lot of room, and if you've got more than one ship, ew, that's gross. So let's play with this a little bit. At first blush, you might be like card UI dot position equals new vector of 0, 0, let's say 15, and card UI dot rotation equals new rotator. What is it? Pitch 0, yaw. Actually, I think pitch is what we want. Not used to thinking in yaw, pitch, and roll. Yeah, okay, so, you get your card here, and it now floats above the miniature, and, well, we got a problem there where the back doesn't show up, and that, okay, we can play with that. Card UI dot two-sided equals true. Okay. We can reload that, and now it's backwards on the back end, but, it's something. And we could turn off two-sided and, like, have a duplicate UI and rotate it around. So, like, let's do card UI 2. Let's turn off two-sided. And we'll just copy and paste all this for card UI 2. So I'm going to scoot this down here so that I can easily delete it, because you're probably already realizing what we're doing here. And we can swap this around, and we'll add card UI 2. There we go. We've got a front and a back. That's neat. That might work for you if you want to do it that way. I mean, this has the convenience that it is always on the table, but, blocks a lot of lines, sight lines. And this whole, like, if you're looking at it this way, it's paper thin. Not necessarily ideal. Let's see if there's another option we can do. So I'm going to actually ditch this entire set of card UI 2. And we're going to change this to card UI dot presentation style. We'll change to view aligned. This is where the magic happens. Well, now it always faces the camera. So it's kind of like this floating element that, always faces the camera, which is really neat. So, and you can do a whole bunch of things with this. Like, you could have, in fact, you'll probably see this a lot if you use any of my utility objects. Most of the interface is done through a view-aligned interface like this. But there's one problem with this, at least in its current implementation, aside from the fact that it doesn't solve the sightline issues or anything like that. It takes up a lot of space on screen. The issue here is that if I flip this over, well, a card is now beneath the table. And that's a little weird. And that's because this position is actually what's the relative position from the object. So, I mean, this is true. It's 15 units up from the center of the model. And when you flip the model over, those 15 units are now below in world space. So, a good way around that is actually, if we were to do this, let's get rid of that position. So now it's back to 0, 0, 0 relative to the object. And one of the things I like to do here is I'll actually do a horizontal box, or let's do a vertical box. And put that as a child of the vertical box. And like I said, I know the height of this is 256. So after that, we'll have an empty layout and do a height of, say, 128. So, you've got two elements. You've got a layout, an image and a layout, and they're stacked vertically on top of each other. So if I reload this, oh, that's not tall enough. Let's just double it. Nope, still not tall enough. There we go. So now, if it flips, it's still floating above it because the anchor of the UI element is still the center of the model. There's just an empty layout box here. In fact, what I might actually do is do this and have the anchor Y to be 1, so that like the bottom of the UI will be anchored to the center of the object. I mean, that's kind of semantics. You basically get the same result. Oh, you just need to cut it in half again. So yeah, you get that. And that's cool. That's a neat little thing. You can also do this for screen, which is almost the same thing. The difference here is it's constant size. I would actually not recommend using the screen presentation style for two reasons. One, whilst you're zoomed in, it's nice because it takes up less room in the world, as it were. But if you zoom out, you get a whole bunch of overlapping elements. Like if I were to actually duplicate this, that gets annoying. So I would not recommend doing screen space unless you know exactly what you're doing. The other reason why I don't recommend it is because it doesn't work in VR. The VR will actually fall back to view aligned anyways, so you might as well just use view aligned. So for that, I would recommend that. The other thing, which we'll get to in a minute, is it doesn't work in zoom only. But we'll get to the zoom only in just a minute. Okay, so we have this UI here, and it's floating. You've got, and it's good, right? We've got a little bit of an issue with the let's reload that. There we go. Okay. The other reason why I recommend view aligned is because it's a little more, it's a little better at collisions. You'll notice that I can grab the back of this little hex thing, and just as a reminder, the collider for this miniature is just the hex, like the ship isn't part of the collider, so I can grab the back of this. Whereas if I go to screen, I can only grab the front half of this, and that's because the UI element is actually cutting through the model halfway. Like if I were to actually do let's add a border here. I might need to actually put the border inside a layout, I'm not sure. Yeah, so you'll see that the screen is actually cutting up half the thing, whereas if I go to view aligned, you'll see that, view aligned actually lets the mouse collision go through. So definitely recommend view aligned over screen at all times, forever. Just use it. Just don't use screen. So the other thing I alluded to here is that you can have the UI show up on the zoom. So if I alt hover over top of this, you'll see that you get the little spinny miniature, and that's cool. But we can also do card UI dot zoom visibility equals UI zoom visibility dot zoomed only. And this is not going to look good at first blush, but you'll notice that this is gone. But if I alt hover, you get the card, which I think is kind of neat. Now, one thing you'll notice is that probably that it is fairly small. This, I think, is actually a bit of a bug. I believe there's a way around it, but I can't quite remember. We're going to try it and see what happens. But in contrast, if I pull in, say, I don't know, create object, like this is fairly large on screen, but like this is tiny. And it has to do with like the UI contributing to the size of the box. It's a math thing. So there's a couple ways around this, I think. Let's see if we can conquer some of those. For one, let's actually change this to a horizontal box. And we're going to change the layout to be the first element, and we'll change the width to like 200. We'll change the anchor X to 0, and we'll put the Y anchor back. So if I alt hover this, exactly what I wanted. The card is now to the right of the object. Let's see if I can actually bump that down to 100. That might help. Cool. It's a little wonky, but you know, we'll get there. So I believe the reason why we get this is actually because the UI element that gets created is of arbitrary size. Like there's a default size to the UI widget, like the wrapping widget. And so when you alt hover over something, it looks at the size of the object, the bounding box, and in the case of it including UI, the math can get a little wonky. So what I think we should do, and we're going to try this, is we're actually going to force a canvas size. And so to do that, we're actually going to do a canvas wrapper. I don't normally use these, but this is actually a perfect use case for this. And Canvas has a specific function for adding children. So we have this canvas child function, and it takes 2 arguments. Yeah, I know, you're going to yell at me. Y0 width equals width and height. Height we know we want to be 256. The width we definitely want to be 100 plus whatever the relative width of the card is, and I can't remember what this is, so I'm gonna come into Photoshop and take a look at this card. And okay, yeah, so 354 by 512. So we scaled the card down by half, so that means we need to do 354 divided by 2, which is 177. Now, in theory, this should work. Just reload that, and it didn't. Awesome. Yeah, that's why. Canvas is a bit of a weird beast. And the reason for that is because Canvas doesn't actually have an inherent or an implied size, like a width and height. Instead, it has it kind of has a 0 width and height, so you need to explicitly tell the UI how large to make it. Like, it can't infer the size of the widget. So to do that, we're going to use widget size, set that to false. Card UI.width, width. We're just going to set that to 1 for now, and height to 1. Now, what I can't remember is if this is in world units or UI units. So let's try the UI. Ooh. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. We're getting a scroll bar, which is a little weird. Let's actually ditch this out. And I'm just going to bump the card over 100. Perfect. Now that's more like it. I mean, we still get some weird artifacts with scrolling, but, you know, or with zooming. Like, if I scroll up, it gets really pixelated, but, like, the default, it's not bad. We can actually change this to 512. And this will be 354. Oh, yeah, that's right, because 100 plus 54, 512. Yeah. You kind of get that. Thing is, I don't like how small that miniature is, so I wonder if we can actually just scale that down. Oh, that's nice. That's much better. So here's a good instance where I would actually use scaling a little bit better. And let's actually change that to 120. See what happens there. It doesn't quite overlap as much. And I don't know. Maybe you like that. Maybe that's actually a good thing for you. There we go. Yeah, so now it spins in place and it's, you know, a thing. You could get even more fancy with this if you really wanted to. Like, you could do little arrows pointing to different parts of the thing just for neat effects or whatnot. You could get fancy with this. And I think that could get fun. Like little things, like little arrow pointers that go, hey, this is the warp engine, or this is the bridge. And, you know, that's actually pretty viable, actually, which is, I think, kind of neat. You know, let's give this a shot. Let's see what happens. Const... new UI element, and we're going to set the, yeah, we'll set the scale to that HUD UI dot anchor X to be, I'm going to set this to 0, anchor Y to be, what do I want this to be? I'm actually going to set this to 0 as well. No, I'm going to set this to 1. We want this to be zoomed only. Oh, by the way, while the presentation tile is view aligned, this doesn't do anything. That actually has no meaning. So we're going to set that to this. We're going to set that to this. And we might as well set the widget size to false, or use widget size to false. Dot width equals, let's say 256. We'll do the same thing with the height. And HUD UI widget equals render. And let's, I don't know. What do I want this to be? Well, first we need to wrap this in a canvas. And then we'll do canvas child. We'll do an image, src equals UI slash pointer dot ping. And I don't have this asset in here yet, but that's okay. We'll get to that in a second. X is going to be 0, Y is going to be 0, width is going to be 256, height is going to be 256. Now, bear with me a second, I'm going to throw this pointer image in there real quick, so bear with me. Okay, so I just real quickly, created this pointer ping file. In fact, I might actually reduce the thickness of this line here, but this is what I'm looking at. And let's actually get it in there real quick. And yes, I did just reduce the thickness of that. Alright, so we've got this pointer, and I actually made the height of this to be 64, so I'm going to lower the Y down to 256 minus 64. So the Y is the top of the element. The top of the image is the height of the canvas minus the height of the image, so it's kind of basically bottom aligned. So there's that. Now what I can't remember is, can I actually have more than one canvas element on 0, Y, 0, and I don't know. Can I do that? Is that a thing? I should be able to. Why not? Yeah, okay, I can. Neat. And we're just going to say bridge. Let's see how that looks. And nothing happens. Awesome. Oh, because, again, I always forget to do that. Always forget to do that. Okay, so we got this thing. Doesn't quite do what I want it to, but we'll get there. Let's actually hike this up to... Yep, not quite doing what I want. We got a couple things going on. One, this text is in the very wrong place, and second, it's not pointing to the right place, and third, it is overlapping the card. I'm not going to worry about overlapping the card. You can, there's better ways to do that, and maybe moving that over or whatnot, or maybe actually adding the card afterwards. I'm not sure if that'll actually do the right thing there, but yeah, it doesn't look like it. It doesn't matter. Anyways, you can fiddle with this to your heart's content, and it'll sort itself out. So I'm going to actually take a second to 64 minus 16. Okay, that's better. I mean, it's being overlapped by the image, so that's not great. Let's actually change this to 30. Oh, you know why? Because the height is wrong. Okay, that's better. We can do a text justify text justification dot center. I wonder what that'll do. Yeah. I don't know. Whatever. The other thing you can do here is color equals, let's say, FC3. And this is why I made that texture white, so that you can multiply colors with it, so that there's that. And let's actually get that in the right position. So in this case, this is a good use of position. And what I need to do here is find the point at which that pointer will point to the bridge. So let's say 2.5. I'm just going to trial and error this. That looks right as far as that position goes. Let's try that. Almost. That's almost there. It's a little low and still a little... Still pointing in the wrong place. There we go. That's actually not bad. So, like, you could actually get really fancy in terms of this. So you could be like, you could have it point to your weapon emplacements and have the actual weapon cards there and do it that way. I caution against getting too fancy because it still needs to be legible for a person hovering over it. And likewise, you can always set up permissions. So like, is it, how do we do this? I think it's how we did with, I might have covered this. I should actually check. Yeah, I totally did this with ownership in a previous tutorial. So you could always hide the alt hover UI based on permissions. So you can be like, only the owner can see this, or only the owner and game masters couldn't see this in the alt hover. Otherwise, it just won't render the hover UI for any other player. That might be useful to you. Not sure. But that's how you can use view aligned and zoom visibility on your elements. I think that's really handy, particularly for kind of abstracting away some of the superfluous data cards that you might have on the table. You can just alt hover it and it'll show the card. Or you could have both if you want that redundancy. It's up to you. But yeah, you can get really fancy with this. So, would recommend. Anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to cover for the most part here. There's also on-screen UIs, which I will probably cover at some point. But that kind of has that same, it doesn't work in VR, so I'm loath to encourage people to use that, but it might be an avenue if you want to use that. But yeah, until next time, good luck.